Disclaimer: this episode contains discussions of a death investigated as a possible suicide, including detailed descriptions of evidence, injuries, and investigative findings. Please take care while listening. Previously on Love and Justice. Did investigators attach meaning to the song Last Resort by Papa Roach because they were already looking at the room through a particular lens?
The victim was tucked in. How could somebody do a seriously deep laceration on the wrist as well as a neck wound and then tuck themselves in bed like that?
Above Andrew's bed, carved into a wooden shelf, was the phrase, "Die, Morrow, Pig."
I think it's impossible to ignore die pig, the English words that we recognize. And so we're just kind of figuring out what the morrow means.
And perhaps this is where maybe somebody listening will hear "Die, Morrow, Pig" and say, oh, that rings a bell. Maybe that's where we need help from our listeners, you know? Greetings and welcome to Love and Justice. I'm Kyle Olson. When first responders entered into room number 12, they were essentially walking into a puzzle. They discovered a room filled with individual pieces that investigators would eventually attempt to fit together into one final conclusion. And in a case like this, every piece matters. Not just what supports a theory, but what challenges it, what complicates it. In our last episode, we began examining those pieces one by one. And today, we continue. But first, we need to return to one of the strangest details inside of room 12. Carved into the wooden loft above Andrew's bed were the words, "Die, Morrow, Pig." So after our last episode, we opened the floor to you. We invited listeners to call our hotline with any information that could help. And to our surprise, our phones started ringing.
Hi, I'm a huge fan of the podcast, and I was actually listening to your guys' thing about Die, Morrow, Pig. I'm not like an expert or anything, but I was listening to what you guys were talking about, and I did kind of like my own deep dive on it. And I mean, I have some theories. I did find that the word morrow can be sometimes used as like a shortened version of like maricon, like a common homophobic slur in Spanish. I don't know exactly how you say it. I don't speak Spanish. There could be another thing as well. I know that marro, like M-A-R-R-O, could be slang in Northern California, referring to kind of like someone who plays by the rules like way too much to the detriment of like a group, or slang for like the law or following the rules. Also, like in Southern California Spanish, marro can also be slang for like penny pinching. And that kind of struck me because I was like, oh my gosh, Andrew was a treasurer. Just thinking about that, like, die, Morrow, Pig, that seems almost like die, you rule following pig. Since Andrew was the treasurer of his frat, maybe that could have meant he was, like, policing the funds. I mean, that's just my theory. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. Again, I love the podcast, and you guys are doing great work. Thanks so much.
Could one of those explanations finally unlock what Die, Morrow, Pig actually meant? Maybe. Or maybe it's just another strange detail inside a room already overflowing with unanswered questions. One of the most important pieces of evidence discovered inside Andrew's fraternity dorm room was not blood evidence, a missing shoe, or a mysterious song. Instead, it was a single handwritten note sitting on top of Andrew's computer desk. A note investigators would eventually point to as one of the clearest indicators that Andrew Wieman had taken his own life. According to the DOJ equivocal death analysis, the note was positioned on the desk to the left of Andrew's bed, and it began with 2 words. Dear World.
I am only doing this because I have no other choice. I can no longer take care of myself, and I don't want others to have to do it for me. I can't tell what is wrong or right anymore, and I don't want to hurt anyone. Thank you all for loving me. I hope to see you in heaven. Love, Andrew.
As we talk about the note, it's also worth mentioning that Andrew's backpack was found inside room 12, and at first glance, it appeared largely undisturbed. The outer pocket of the backpack was partially unzipped, with pens protruding from it. Pens that were consistent with the type used to write the note found on Andrew's desk. A handwriting analysis confirmed that Andrew Wieman did in fact write the note. Family records indicate that the note was examined by multiple analysts, including senior examiners, and investigators reportedly concluded that it was not written under any obvious signs of duress. But even with those conclusions, the note never fully settled the case for anyone. The Wieman family has acknowledged that parts of the note resembled Andrew. They agreed that the handwriting appeared to match, and the heart beside Andrew's signature reportedly felt consistent with him. But they also believed that there were aspects that seemed unusual. The tone, the phrasing. Dear World? It's an unusual opening, addressed to everyone, yet connected to no one. Andrew's parents, Wes and Jan, believe strongly that it wasn't Andrew who wrote the note.
The suicide note was not Andrew. They said it was his writing, but it was not. Dear World? The local suicide team came in and said that sounded more like a generic note. Some fraternities had required pledges to fill out a suicide note in case something happened to them during their hazing activities. And it was more of that kind of note. He was a fluent writer. I mean, he wouldn't write Dear World.
Andrew's brother, Dan, has similar feelings on the note found.
Yes, there was a note. And while everybody would say, well, that's just pretty damning evidence, I would disagree. My brother was an eloquent writer. The words that were used, the length of this suicide note, it just wasn't his voice. I mean, Dear World, like every single thing I ever read from him had so much personalization to it. I couldn't make sense of it because it was so not him.
Andrew's family struggled to reconcile the note with the version of Andrew they had seen just days earlier. Someone making plans, spending time with friends, and still talking about the future. And that feeling was only deepened by a memory shared by one of Andrew's former teachers, who recalled him acting strongly to another student's suicide in high school, acknowledging the pain and grief that it leaves behind for a family left to carry it. Andrew grew up in a Christian family. Faith was not some random or decorative part of his life. It was present in the home he grew up in and in the people around him. Near Andrew's bed in room number 12, investigators found a Bible.
In all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. Abstain from sinful desires, which wage war against your soul. When they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats.
For investigators, the Bible became part of the larger narrative they believed was unfolding inside the room. A religious man, a farewell note, and a scripture connected to suffering. But like so many things in room number 12, while the object is factual, the interpretation is where things become less certain. For many Christians, passages about suffering are not inherently connected with suicide or hopelessness. They are often about endurance, about remaining faithful through hardship and finding meaning inside of pain instead of surrendering to it.
Set your hope fully on the grace to be given you. Live such good lives among the pagans that they may see your good deeds and glorify God. All people are like grass, and all their glory is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of the Lord endures forever.
Andrew's faith showed up in another way, too. Not just in the Bible discovered beside him, but in what he was wearing. Andrew was wearing an abstinence ring, sometimes referred to as a purity ring. In the DOJ equivocal death analysis, that detail became part of the larger behavioral profile investigators were building around Andrew's life, relationships, and state of mind. The report references Andrew's religious upbringing, his relationship with his girlfriend, and the understanding that despite wearing the ring, he was reportedly sexually active. Investigators appear to have viewed that contradiction as potentially meaningful. The implication being that Andrew may have been struggling internally between faith, sexuality, expectations, guilt, or identity. But this is where interpretation again becomes important, because a purity ring does not automatically equal shame. The family's concern is not that investigators explored Andrew's emotional life. Any good investigation should. The concern is whether ordinary tensions in a young person's life began taking on outsized meaning once the case started moving toward suicide. And from what we can tell, the reports do not clearly establish that Andrew's friends, family, or girlfriend consistently described him as spiraling over faith, sex, or any relationships. Andrew's high school girlfriend, Kristen, shared some of her own insights on this.
He definitely was vocal about, when we first met, not having sex. I mean, it was definitely something that he wanted to save, but that didn't happen. It's kids at that age. Like, the realistic nature of somebody exploring their sexuality. Was he wearing the ring? Yeah. Do parents not know everything about you? Of course not. Like, what child do you know that goes and tells their parents everything that they're doing? He was trying to keep up probably a look or an idea for them, if that's what was going on. But he was sexually active, yes. There's no reason, though, to go kill yourself because you're having sex. I think that's an absurd thing to say, especially since he'd been having sex for years. Let's be real. He tried to be the best Christian he could be.
When Andrew Wieman was found inside room number 12, he reportedly had earplugs in his ears. Reports say that Andrew was known to wear earplugs while sleeping, and authorities used that detail to support the idea that he had likely been alone, in bed, and undisturbed. Reports also use this to support the idea that in a major struggle, the earplugs would have likely fallen out. On some levels, that logic makes sense, but there's also another side to consider. Would someone actually put in earplugs before inflicting multiple, fatal, sharp-force injuries upon themselves? And then turn up the music on their computer? The authorities' answer appears to be possibly, especially if the earplugs were a part of Andrew's normal bedtime routine. When Andrew was found in room number 12, he was also wearing a gray, long-sleeved cotton shirt, nylon athletic shorts, boxer shorts, and socks. The shirt has become one of the more heavily analyzed pieces of physical evidence in the room. According to the DOJ, blood patterns on the clothing appeared consistent with blood flowing downward from the shoulders toward the waist. Investigators also documented blood saturation across the front of the shirt, smearing along the lower back area, and what they described as a Y-shaped flow pattern on the rear left side. The report ultimately concluded that the clothing evidence did not contradict the theory of self-inflicted injuries. But stab wounds discovered through clothing brings some questions to mind. Was Andrew lying down? Was he standing or moving? Do the cuts in the shirt line up with the stab wounds on Andrew's body? Are the shirt defects consistent with the knife recovered at the scene? And finally, was wearing a shirt to sleep even normal activity for Andrew? Throughout this episode, you will hear recreated accounts based on interviews with first responders and investigators. Certain names and identifying details have been changed or intentionally generalized to protect identities, but the substance and the overall spirit of the information remain consistent with what was originally described.
Did Andrew ever drink, like, in his room by himself?
No.
Did he ever drink before he went to school?
No.
Would you say that Andrew drank excessively?
Or
about as much as you guys all did?
I mean, about as much as we all did, which is excessive.
That's all right. I'm not here to judge you guys for anything. I'm just trying to fill in these blank spots.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What did he used to sleep in?
He would just sleep in his boxers.
No shirt?
Right.
Anytime he would wear a shirt?
No, not really. Like, when it was cold, I don't think he had a shirt. He just had extra blankets.
What would he do when he came into the house or into the room, like with his backpack and his keys? Where would he put them, actually?
Well, like, we had a couch last year, and he would walk in, and he'd just put it on our couch.
You mean in the bedroom?
Yeah, in the bedroom. And I'm not sure if he would put his keys in there right away, but I just know every time they were always in there. I mean, when I'd walk by, it would be open, and I never saw them lying around anywhere else.
Okay. Did he ever complain about not being able to sleep?
Yeah. Actually, I snore pretty loud, and he would always make fun of me, but he would, complain that sometimes, I'm sure, to his parents a lot.
Did he get into the habit of wearing earplugs?
Yeah. I think he actually tried that for... I don't know if he ended up wearing it, actually. I don't know. I think, yeah.
So did he, end up wearing them on a regular basis, or...?
I don't think so. I don't think he felt comfortable, and he didn't worry about it that much. And so I think he stopped doing it.
If you could say one good thing about Andrew, what would it be?
Just how smart he is and was. Good grades.
What about one bad thing?
Bad thing. I can't really think of one bad thing at all.
Partially concealed beneath the bedding of Andrew's bed was a knife that investigators would ultimately identify as the weapon used in his death. The knife was manufactured by Western out of Boulder, Colorado. It had a single sharpened edge, a black handle with red and white striping near each end, and a broken tip. The blade measured roughly 90 millimeters from the hilt to the broken tip. And according to investigators, the knife contained Andrew's blood and fingerprints. Officially, the knife became one of the strongest physical anchors supporting suicide. But nobody in Andrew's circle thought it was weird that he owned a knife. Quotes like, "Every kid's got a knife," or "It didn't look threatening," were some of the quotes heard by authorities when fraternity brothers were asked about the knife. Some people may wonder how Andrew even obtained the knife. It was actually given to Andrew by his brother, Dan.
I had such an immeasurable amount of guilt thinking that the knife that I had given my brother prior to him going to college was the knife that was used. That, to this day, still kind of haunts me. And it wasn't like I gave him that knife, it was just like, hey man, like I was collecting knives. I mean, I just thought it was a fun thing to collect and, kind of strange thing to collect, but I just thought it was a neat one. And, I was like, hey, do you want to take one, just to have? And he's like, sure. And that was the one he chose. And then when it was the knife that I had given him, it made my heart sink. It seems like it was very convenient that Andrew had a knife. I still don't know if the knife that they found was the knife that was actually used based on wound size and depth. Especially because the knife that was found, the knife that I had given him, was missing the tip. And I can tell you right now, when I gave him the knife, it had a tip. There's a part of me that thinks that, man, did they ever x-ray Andrew's body to see if that knife tip was in his body? Did they actually look around the room to see if there was any weird things, like where the knife may have cut into something and maybe the tip was there? Like, I think that it was very easy for them to call it a suicide because, it's just a fast, quick way of dealing with it. That's always resonated with me too, because what college campus wants? A homicide on campus.
There was one final piece of evidence connected to Andrew that investigators also had to consider. It was not found inside of room number 12. Instead, it was sitting just outside the fraternity house. Andrew's car remained parked outside during the entire 60-hour window in which he was missing and unaccounted for. Investigators did not appear to find anything significant inside the vehicle. After what was described as a cursory search, the car was eventually released back to the Wieman family. But some believe that Andrew's car represented a timeline. Andrew had just driven back to Davis from Eureka days earlier. And according to family records, the fuel gauge inside the Nissan reportedly did not work properly. Instead, Andrew relied on the trip odometer to track mileage and estimate when he needed gas. And that small detail matters, because records indicate that the odometer reportedly only showed about 15 miles. After a long drive from Eureka, that likely would have meant that the trip meter had been reset recently, most logically after refueling. Investigators seemingly never asked friends or fraternity brothers whether Andrew got gas when he went out for sandwiches, or whether he refueled after returning to Davis. They also didn't appear to ask whether the trip reading matched any known trip. Why not? Did someone else drive Andrew's car? The car does not prove that Andrew left the fraternity house after January 1st, but it may have been one of the few pieces of physical evidence capable of testing the timeline. Instead, it appears to have only received a cursory look, leaving behind one more unanswered detail inside of the missing 60 hours. By the time investigators left room number 12, they had a theory. and they would take those theories back to the labs and offices where they would investigate and pressure test them. But what nobody knew at the time was just how long that process would take. On the next episode of Love and Justice.
Oh, I was pissed. I was mad. Where did he come up with this comment about Andrew? What a slap in the face. How are you remotely qualified to say that? Could someone do this physically? Could someone inflict all these wounds on their body and then tuck themselves into bed? Is that possible?
Love and Justice is an official production of Magic Lamp Productions and is primarily recorded in California. This episode was executive produced and hosted by me, Kyle Olson. Supervising producer, Alexa Lopez. Producer, Lisa Visione. Edited by Cody Crabb. Special thanks to Amanda Crabb, Bob Graytrix, Brandon Allen McClanahan, Carlos Vera, Ethan Rosenberg, Haley Gabby, Mick Alpert, PJ McCabe, Richard Levichin Jr., Roxanne DePalma, and Stephen Paul. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and rate it 5 stars. Every single review greatly helps our exposure and helps us share Andrew's story with a larger audience. So please rate this podcast and share it with your friends today. If you have a tip, question, or thought, please call our hotline at 209-764-5683. That's 209-764-LOVE. Until next time, thanks for listening. This episode covered difficult material. If it brought up anything for you, please reach out for support. In the United States, you can call or text 988 to reach the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, available 24/7 for free and confidential help. You can also chat with someone at 988lifeline.org.